Hey guys, Mandalore of the Maximum Productions here. My name is Victor, and happy Star Wars Day! So today I will be watching Rogue One, a Star Wars story, for the second time. I have already seen it, but I've never actually shared my thoughts on it until now. So I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to share my thoughts with you. So I'm going to be checking back with you guys in a few hours. So here we go. Hey guys, I'm back, and wow, it's not at all as I remember it to be. Nope, not at all. Honestly, I can't really say. The first time I ever saw it, I thought it was just meh. But I didn't really pay much attention to it when I first saw it. Now, I actually think it's a lot better than I initially thought it was. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still has its flaws. Okay, so the story is pretty much about this little girl named Jyn Erso who's living with her father on a planet. I don't remember the name of a planet. Her mother's name is, I think it's, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really remember. But her father, yeah. Who can forget that name? It's Galen. Like Galen Marek, aka Starkiller from the Force Unleashed games. So then she actually decides to run from this guy named Director Krennic, who's actually trying to recruit Galen into the creation of a powerful super weapon that's being created by the Empire. That weapon, of course, being the Death Star. So Jyn pretty much hides from the Empire when she's found by Saw Gerrera, played by Forrest Whitaker. Yeah, Saw Gerrera from the Clone Wars is in the movie. So she ultimately gets captured by the Empire, and then there's this rebel named Cassian, played by Diego Luna, and his droid companion K2SO. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. The Diego Luna character wasn't really that good. I'm not really a fan of Diego Luna as an actor, but the one that actually caught my attention was the droid K2SO, or K as they call him. When I first saw the design for K2SO, I thought it was going to be just another C-3PO, or another R2-D2, or hell, even another Chopper. On the topic of Chopper, we'll get to that later. But when I finally saw the movie, I don't know, it actually felt like one of those good old days of the Old Republic. As you may actually notice, there are actually several elements of HK-47 from the Knights of the Old Republic games in K2SO. And I miss that crazy droid, but at least we have a new one. There's also these two Shaman of the Wills named Chirrut and Baze, who are on Jedha, and this pilot named Bodhi, who actually gets captured by Saw Gerrera, who's also on Jedha. So what happens is, it was good seeing Tarkin again and how the Death Star was actually finished. But yeah. So what happens is Cassian is actually sent by the rebellion to find the pilot and Saw Gerrera, since Saw Gerrera is a friend of Galen and the Ersos. They assume that bringing Jyn with them would actually make him want to return to the rebellion, because from what it seems and from what we saw in the Season 4 trailer for Rebels, Saw Gerrera was actually a part of the rebellion at one point until he broke ties with them entirely. So Saw Gerrera then tells Jyn that Galen actually sent a message with the pilot, with Bodhi, in which he actually reveals a weakness that he had hidden in the Death Star. And if they can actually exploit that weakness, it could cause the entire station to pretty much explode, like we saw in A New Hope. So what happens is that sorry. Jin eventually discovers from the pilot where her father actually is, moments before Tarkin decides to test the Death Star on Jeddah, pretty much destroying an entire city and presumably killing Saw Gerrera. And I say presumably because nowhere does it say that he died. So what happens next is Jin actually decides to go to this planet to... what was it again? I don't know. It's hard to remember the names of some of these planets. So Jin decides to go there and to actually bring her father back and show them that he's not really a fan of the Empire and tell them about this weakness that he actually hid inside the Death Star because the message was destroyed when Tarkin destroyed Jeddah. So then it turns out that Cassian actually has direct orders to find Galen and, well, kill him. Yeah. His mission is to find Jin's dad and actually kill him. But ultimately what happens is he decides not to kill him, so the rebels send in fighters in to do the job. So yeah, what happens next is simple. Galen gets killed. Jin is actually a remorse of this, and actually starts to think that maybe the rebellion aren't really the good guys they portray themselves as. Yeah, I got the same impression when they pretty much just gave the order to kill this one guy because he worked on the Death Star. So then what happens is Jin actually decides to travel to this planet called Scarif, where the plans for the Death Star are located. Under a file, a little Easter egg hinted at by Galen himself, in which he actually tells her. It's actually labeled Stardust, which is what Galen refers to his daughter as. He calls her Stardust. So from there we actually see Director Krennic, this guy who recruited Galen at the start. And he actually travels to Mustafar, where we finally get to see Darth Vader's castle. And the man in the suit himself, Darth Vader. It was cool to actually see James Earl Jones reprise the role, because other than Rebels, he hasn't really done Darth Vader in years. So Jin, Bodhi, Cassian, Kay, I don't know. It's a little hard to pronounce. Baze and several other members of the rebellion ultimately decide to steal the Imperial shuttle that they acquired when Galen was killed to travel to Scarif and actually steal the plans themselves. So what happens is they travel to Scarif and attempt to steal the plans for the Death Star. And what happens is this really epic battle above the planet and on the surface of the planet. Oh, and you guys remember when I mentioned rebels and little Easter eggs? Well, it turns out that Chopper from Rebels is actually in Rogue One. He makes a small cameo. It's actually very brief, so much so that if you blink for even a second, you miss the whole thing. There's also a mention in the communications tower on the Rebel base on Yavin 4 of a General Syndulla. Most people have referenced this to actually be Hera Syndulla, captain of the Ghost, who is also from Rebels. On the subject of the Ghost, the ship itself can actually be seen on Scarif during the battle. So as the battle rages on, it's pretty much a race against time to get the plans to the rebellion before Tarkin arrives with, well, the Death Star. So one by one, the members of the Rogue One crew are picked apart. Rogue One is actually the name of the ship they actually arrived on. Hence the title, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So, what happens is K2 is the first one to go. He actually tries to hold off as many stormtroopers as he can, and he goes down in a heroic way, keeping the Imperials from reaching Jyn and Cassius before ultimately shutting down. Next is Chirrut. Whatever. He actually tries to see if Bodhi can actually get into contact with the Rebel fleet so they can transmit the plans by taking out a planetary shield that is preventing any form of communication from reaching the fleet, or leaving the planet, actually. So, Chirrut actually flips a switch that allows Bodhi to get in contact with the Rebel fleet, but ultimately the console blows up and Chirrut gets killed. Bodhi actually sends a transmission to the rebellion to actually destroy the shield generator, which makes a Hammerhead Corellia, one of those Hammerhead style ships that we see in both Rebels and the Knights of the Old Republic games, to crash into a Star Destroyer and actually pull it towards the shield generator, eventually destroying it. But Bodhi gets blown up by a thermal detonator. Baze then actually starts to shoot stormtroopers at random, and he actually starts to receive some hits in return. And after he killed his last stormtrooper that was actually holding a thermal detonator, the detonator explodes and Baze gets caught in the explosion. Cassian and Jyn actually use the opportunity presented by both the droid and Bodhi to transmit the plans to the Rebel fleet. And this ultimately leads to their inevitable confrontation with Director Krennic, who is also on Scarif trying to stop the Rebels from taking the plans for the Death Star to the Rebel fleet. And Krennic actually died the way I think he should have, being destroyed by the Death Star itself when Tarkin arrives to, well, destroy the Imperial facility holding the plans to prevent the rebels from acquiring the data, moments before Darth Vader actually arrives. Yeah, Darth Vader. You'd think that since Rogue One is actually hours before A New Hope, that we wouldn't really see Darth Vader. Well, we do actually. And he's pretty badass in that one, but we'll get to that later. So what happens next is Cassian and Jyn are actually just hugging on the shore of a bridge, realizing that their time is up, no one's coming to get them, as the beam shot by the Death Star on orders of Tarkin actually hits, and they get caught in the explosion. So the plans are transmitted to the Rebel fleet successfully, and just as the Rebels are about to deliver it to Princess Leia on the Tantive 4, oh, I forgot to mention, Bail Organa is in the movie too. He states he's going to return to Alderaan and actually contact his people, which actually tell his people that his negotiations have failed, and pretty much digging his own grave. Because if you've seen A New Hope, you know what happens to Alderaan and to Bail Organa. So what happens after that is that the Rebels ultimately try to reach the Tantive 4 when, Darth Vader arrives. And he just starts going apeshit on the Rebels and starts killing them just to get to the plans. And the scene is just so epic. I mean, this is what we should have seen in Revenge of the Sith when Anakin actually dubbed the Darth Vader suit. This is something that I'm sure a lot of fans actually wanted to see, even in the original trilogy, because when have we seen Darth Vader do something more awesome? Let's take it back, Season 2 of Rebels. In there, Darth Vader was freaking badass, but it still doesn't compare to this one scene in Rogue One. That little scene pretty much summed up everything that's pure badass about Darth Vader. So what happens is, well, you know, if you've seen Rogue One, which I'm sure a lot of you have, you know what happens. The Rebels get the plans to Princess Leia, and the Tantive 4 circles over Tatooine, and then A New Hope begins. So, what are my thoughts? Well, as I said before, when I first saw this movie, I wasn't really paying much attention to it, so my initial reaction was that it was bleh. But, having watched it again, I now see that it's actually a lot better than I give it credit for. You can tell there's actually a lot of effort that was put into it. Felicity Stone did an excellent job as Jyn Erso, and while I'm not really a fan of the Diego Luna character, I also have to acknowledge the character of K2SO. That droid pretty much brought me back the dear old memories of Knights of the Old Republic. More specifically, HK-47. God, how much I miss that crazy droid. I know I already said that, but who cares? I don't. So, then, whatever. The blind guy. Okay, I know he has a name, but I can't really pronounce his name, so I'm just gonna call him the blind guy. He's actually one of the more complex characters. He's a shaman of the wills. I'm not entirely sure what a shaman of the wills is, but from what I saw, it's some form of division based on Jedi philosophy. Based on original Jedi philosophy. Not the Clone Wars era Jedi philosophy, but ancient Jedi philosophy. We see traces of the Jedi on Jedha. Well, what a coincidence. Jedi, you know, whatever. But there's actually this really funny scene where Saw Gerrera's rebels actually capture them, and they start putting burlap sacks over the heads of Baze, Jyn, Cassian, K2. They even put one over the blind guy's head, and he actually says, "Are you kidding me? I am blind." And when I heard that line, I was laughing my ass off. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would I rate this movie? An 8. I actually give it an 8. It's not perfect. Some parts of it are dumb. But overall, the movie is good. Oh, I forgot to mention. Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera was actually the perfect choice, in my opinion. Seeing James Earl Jones give the voice of Darth Vader again was also pretty good. And I know the Emperor isn't on the movie, but he is mentioned a few times. Even though seeing Tarkin, I thought it was just going to be someone else doing the role of Tarkin, which it ultimately was. It was someone doing just the voice. The body, they tried to make it as close as they could to Jim Cummings, since he's no longer with us, and neither is Carrie Fisher by that matter. But it was still a pretty decent job, even if the CGing of Tarkin and Princess Leia wasn't really that great. So, overall, the movie is good. There are some parts of it that are epic, like the Battle of Scarif at the end, the hints at Rebels, Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera. Lots of those things were actually pretty good. So, overall, I like this movie, and if I had to see it again, I most definitely would. So, those are my thoughts on Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I know it was a little long, but I wanted to do something special for Star Wars Celebration, and I haven't done something like this before, and I meant to say Star Wars Day. So, it was actually a pretty good experience. I thought Rogue One was actually pretty good. So, yeah, it was pretty good. So, those are my thoughts on Rogue One. If you like this video, drop a like. It really helps the channel out. Not that it's pretty much done much for the channel, but it's a real nice touch, guys. And I really appreciate it if you could drop a like. Also, if you'd like to, you can subscribe and leave a comment below. What did you guys think about the movie? Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? Did you think it was nah? Let me know in the comments below. So, thank you guys so much for watching here at Mandalore the Maximum. My name is Victor, and I would simply like to say, for Mandalore! Sorry, just really wanted to say that.